Shannon on Monday afternoon following a car crash. Angelo State has renamed their English department, plus a preview on tomorrow's big midterm election day. All of this plus more. I'm Matt Trammell, and this is Live. Alejandro's Kitchen and Tequila cooks fresh corn tortillas served warm all day long. Come taste what's on the menu, which is packed with unique surprises like how about a chorizo with queso for an appetizer. Or for the more traditionalist, the San Angelo plate includes a tamale, enchilada, and a freshly made taco. Every Friday is karaoke night from 8 until midnight. Alejandro's Kitchen and Tequila is open 11 to 10 weekdays and 11 to midnight on Friday and Saturdays. They're located there on the Tequila Strip. That's 4388 Sherwood Way between Southwest and Sunset. That's Alejandro's Kitchen and Tequila, 4388 Sherwood Way, open every day for lunch and dinner. Go check them out. We start the show today with some breaking news. At around 2 o'clock on Monday afternoon, emergency crews were called out to the intersection of West Avenue N and South Bryant for the report of a major crash. When they arrived on scene, they discovered a Buick Encore that had struck a pole in front of the subway. The driver of the Buick was unresponsive on scene, and our reporters claimed that he had no pulse. Medics rushed him to the hospital. Life-saving measures were performed on scene. Police do not believe any injuries were sustained during the crash. In more positive news, Angelo State on Monday received a $1 million grant from the family of the slain instructor, Natalie Zan Ryan. Because of the gift, Angelo State's English department will be renamed after Ryan, and it will be the Natalie Zan Ryan Department of English and Modern Language. Here's what President of Angelo State, Dr. Ronnie Hawkins, had to say about Ryan and the donation.
The second university to honor the Ryan family. We are extremely grateful to Mr. Ryan for his generous gift, which will allow us to enrich the educational experiences of our students in many different ways, while also paying tribute, eternal tribute, I might also add, to his sister. The Natalie Zan Ryan Department of English and Modern Languages is also our second academic department, named for an outstanding and valued former faculty member. We will proudly carry Natalie's legacy forward in the spirit of the Ram family.
The donor for the gift is Ryan's older brother, Brent Ryan. He also had a few nice words to say on behalf of his sister. Let's watch.
She loved her students. She was a great professor. And I can remember during holidays and vacations and times that we'd get to spend with her, she'd invariably end up telling us a story or two about one of her students. And she tended to focus on those students that were maybe, well, how shall I say this, not at the top of the class, maybe some disciplinary challenges here and there. And, you know, I always wondered, I really wonder what kind of a professor was she? I knew her to be fiercely independent, full of grit and determination. She was not one to suffer fools lightly at all. And any of you that knew her knew that about her. But it wasn't until I found a website called Rate My Professor. And I'm sorry, I could not resist. I read that thing from start to finish and read all the comments, and it was a part of my sister that I didn't know and that many of our family didn't really know. But around that hard exterior, you know, that tough, gritty person, the epitome of West Texas, was a really caring person who cared deeply about the mission, cared deeply about her students, and worked so hard and dedicated her lives for the success of ASU and the Department of English and Natural Languages.
Ryan was killed by her husband on New Year's Eve almost 1 year ago. For more on this story, click it on the homepage on sanangelolive.com. Tomorrow is the big day. That's right, the midterm elections are here. And what better way to spend it than finding out who won and who lost right here on sanangelolive.com. Tomorrow night, we will run two shows, one at 7 and one at 10 o'clock. During the show, we will give you real-time updates along with analysis and interviews. We will tell you more about this during our interview segment later in the show, so stick around. And if you didn't vote, early vote, don't worry. It'll be a beautiful day to stand in line. Highs for tomorrow will be 82 with a low of 64. This string of nice weather continues until Friday. This is when the cold front will blow in. On Friday, the high will only be 61, plus there's a low of 38. Those cold temperatures will continue throughout the weekend, with highs being 56 on Saturday and 62 on Sunday. But of course, we knew winter would be coming, especially since it's playoff time for Texas high school football. To get you caught up on all the action for this Friday night, here is Cover One analyst James Bellini. James?
The regular season is over and the postseason is here. Almost half the teams in the state turned in their helmets for basketballs, but let's go ahead and talk about the teams that did make the playoffs, starting with the Central Bobcats. Central lost to Friendship last Friday, but still made the playoffs. They'll be making the trip out of the Central Time Zone to El Paso to take on El Paso Eastwood. Eastwood has a very good quarterback in Evan Minaharas and a beast receiver in Curtis Murillo. The Wallhawks won their district and ended up with a bye week in the first week of the playoffs. Tornillo was shorthanded on players and had to forfeit the last few games of the season, and it's only a 4-team district. Wall will play the winner of Childress and Cahoma next week. Some 2A action. Cristobal drew Hawley in the first round, which, well, probably wasn't the team the Cougars wanted. Hawley probably still feels that state lost last season, so yeah, they're going back. Another team on 277 pulled a tough matchup. The El Dorado Eagles, they'll be playing the Albany Lions. The newly named Clayton Weissoon Field at Wall will get some playoff action as Sterling City is looking to get revenge on the Miles Bulldogs, who beat the Eagles in the second half comeback in week 2, 40-21. Sonora ended up the first seed and will play Olney. Olney likes to run the ball, which is something the Broncos have got a lot of the past 2 weeks with Cristobal and Forsan. San Angelo TLCA will take on the Crane Golden Cranes. This is the first time they have a playoff berth as a 3A school. And at the 6-man level, Erie County will take on the May Tigers. May has made it to state the past 2 seasons, only to come up short both games against Sterling City in 2020 and Westbrook last year. Cover One will have as much playoff coverage as possible, so tune in Friday for exclusive coaches interviews, score updates, highlights, and more to find out who is moving on and who is playing basketball.
For more than 25 years, Carpetech has been serving our customers and communities with floor care and emergency restoration services. I'm Cade Simmons. Thank you for welcoming Carpetech and my family to the Concho Valley. We look forward to serving you.
After the news, I'm here with Yantis Green, our editor-in-chief. I'm Joe Hyde, and we're going to talk about a little bit about elections because we got elections tomorrow. And who better to talk about elections than Yantis Green? I mean, the guy knows everything about elections. But the big news story you wrote today was about the turnout seems to be favoring Republicans across the state of Texas.
It does. The participation, I think, is what they were focused on that report, and it looks like that more Republicans, percentage-wise, are going to the polls, or at least in early voting, went to the polls than Democrats did, and that's sort of an enthusiasm gap.
Right.
And that's why they are sending the big guns to the Valley, the Democrats are.
Right, and the Valley is really kind of what I was looking at from the data that we got this morning, like Cameron County, Hidalgo County.
Oh, yeah.
All the way up Maverick County, which is Eagle Pass, and then Val Verde County, Del Rio. You're seeing, Republican turnout or enthusiasm. They're saying like 40-50% of the Republicans are voting, while 35-40% of the Democrats are voting. So there doesn't seem to be a Beto wave issue.
No, not in the Valley, because immigration is the issue there, and what they're seeing firsthand in those counties is the horrendous burden of illegal immigration. And just the sheer numbers of people that are crossing that border, and they have to deal with a humanitarian crisis. So the voters there are saying, look, we don't like what this current administration in Washington is doing, and that's how they seem to be voting. That's why the Republicans are making headways in counties that they haven't in 100 years.
I was down in Del Rio about a month ago and flew in there and had to get a taxi driver. right? And that's a blue collar guy kind of guy,
Right,
Hispanic guy. And so I got to talking to him. He said that 1,500 to 2,000 illegals are coming across the border just in Val Verde County, right down there by the International Bridge.
Yep.
And he was mad. And
Yeah.
this guy was
Yeah.
a typical Democrat voter. I mean, if you were to stereotype someone, you look at the taxi driver, the working class guy, he's probably going to be the guy who's voting Democrat.
Yeah.
But he was hopping mad. He said, we just can't control it down here. It's impacting everything. Our schools, our kids aren't safe, those kinds of things. He went on and on for several minutes about the problem, because you just won't believe it. You just have to come down here and watch it in the morning. And then we have this Fox LA guy down there in Normandy, Texas, which is between Del Rio and Eagle Pass. And every morning, if you watch Twitter, he's posting infrared film of illegals coming across the river all night. And it's in the hundreds every day.
And that's something that I've been reporting on for years, and it's just got intensely worse. And again, under this administration, there's a right way and a wrong way to immigrate into the United States, and it's being done the wrong way, and that is affecting the people that live there, and they are voting that way.
Right. And down in Laredo, of course, we have a long-time Democrat, Henry Cuellar. The representative, he might get voted out. I mean, that might be a very strong incumbent who's been kind of a household name in Texas who might be gone.
Those 3 congressional districts down there in the valley and back up along the border are in play. And the Republicans think they're going to win them, and the Democrats are fighting tooth and nail. They sent President Obama, former President Obama, they sent former President Clinton down there to the valley to rally the troops and to get out the voters there.
Right.
And it just has fallen flat so far from the information we have.
One of the things that like Senator Charles Perry will talk about, he says that San Angelo is part of the Magnificent Seven, and there's 7 cities in West Texas that I guess counteract the continuous purpling. The rings around our urban areas are turning purple. For example, where I grew up at the Katy, the Energy Corridor, Katy,
right around
Texas.
Houston,
Yeah, that used to be like 90% Republican.
Right.
Now, I mean, Fort Bend County flipped many years ago, and it's like it's like liberal city. And then you have that western end of Harris County. It's just kind of gone, I guess, purple.
Well,
blue.
and Harris County is the example in Texas. It's the largest city in the state. It is a blue county. Lena Hidalgo is the county judge there. She is in trouble.
Well, but she controls the vote counting.
Right.
She's the county judge, right?
And the Texas Tribune and other media sources there in Houston have said, don't expect results from Harris County Tuesday night.
Imagine that. Just like Pennsylvania, don't expect any results because we got to count all these ballot drop-off boxes. Of course, they don't have those here in Texas. They've outlawed them.
Right. After the 2020 election, the legislature met, tightened up some rules and regulations because of the allegations of voter fraud, and those things are not happening. They can't happen the way that they could have in the past.
Right after those bills were enacted they were signed into law by Governor Abbott, we had Lieutenant Governor Mike Collier stop through our studios. We interviewed, and he was just so mad about that. He says they're taking away the right to vote of all these people.
Yeah.
But when I'm looking at this, I mean, I'm looking at record turnout across the state of Texas.
Yeah.
How all these rules that the mean Governor Abbott put in place. That we're going to stop voter turnout because we won't be able to vote because you don't have your ID or whatever that the other things they did is they did away with motor voting. It's not motor voter, the drive-through voting, which I thought was crazy because I know some people during COVID say, oh, I'd like to be able to drive through and vote, but the problem is you have someone else in your car who is influencing your vote. So you could have someone like go to a nursing home. Hey, you want to go to lunch?
Yeah.
And they'll drive them through the drive-through voting, and next thing you know, you've harvested a lot of votes. And really, a lot of these laws are against harvesting. The other one that they did is said we don't want to have the polling locations open past 7 o'clock. Remember, they wanted to do 24-hour voting?
Yeah, the 24-hour voting. And there are states where you can register and vote on the same day, and that has not been the case in Texas because the potential there is for voter fraud is just too great, and the leadership of Texas doesn't see that as a viable option for voting.
It's harvesting, and we already know that in the Valley, and I know from Del Rio, there's a lot of voter harvesting that still goes on. Have a big party, bring your ballot application. Got to be 65 and over in Texas, but bring your ballot application, fill it out together. We'll fill it out together. And then someone from the county clerk's office tips them off, says, "Hey, we just mailed out all the ballots." And then you have another party for a ballot party. Bring your ballot. We'll fill them out together. That's probably still happens, I would imagine. But the stuff that's happening, like Wisconsin, they have the same day voting or same day registration.
Register and vote at the same day.
And you had, I don't know, 250,000 more votes for Biden than Hillary Clinton. That's and that makes you go,
Well, and we're dancing around this. Former President Trump, of course, alleged voter fraud and voter manipulation and election manipulation. Voter fraud has been an issue, a paramount issue in this country for the last 2 years, and there are people that do not trust the election process.
Right.
And there are people in the morning.
Who are these people? They carry guns.
There are people when the polls close tomorrow night and on Wednesday morning when there will seem to be some delays, that people will point fingers and say, "See, I told you that there is the potential for fraud there." If we don't trust the election process, the country's in trouble.
Right.
So we'll be watching that closely, and that's why I think that this preemptive strike from the progressives and from the media in particular in Harris County are saying, wait, just because you don't get election results immediately from Harris County and the other large counties in Texas, don't think that there's any shenanigans going on.
Right.
So when you preemptively have to say that, I have to question
why,
what's going to go on.
Right. Well, the other thing is, they don't allow a whole lot of mail. You have to meet certain criteria in Texas. I think it's over 65 or military, out of the state when voting goes on, or out of your hometown. In Pennsylvania, they allow just about anyone to vote early. All right. Yeah. But here's the problem, or here's I think this is a good illustration. Florida has it wired. Florida has the results. From early voting, from voting, everything within an hour. It seems like right after closing, polls closing. Remember, Florida was a mess back in 2001. Remember
it was.
The Chads?
In 2000. That was what started all this mess between Bush Gore.
Yeah.
And we've come a long way since then. And those hanging Chad paper punch hole ballots where you
remember
you
the guy
pull the
staring
lever.
at the Chad wanted to know.
But we have come a long way, and it's important because the integrity of the country depends on the public's trust of the government and the process of electing that government, and we are not there right now.
You keep going back to that. But isn't it because we have Republican activists out there creating movies like Dinesh D'Souza's 2,000 Mules? Yeah. Isn't he part of the problem?
Well, there are a lot of issues. You would have to throw.
I like to ask questions like that.
You would have to throw President Trump in there as well, for stirring the pot and for the tremendous backlash over the January 6th situation in Washington. So the country is not at peace, and we are not united. And the Democrats look at and the progressives look at this election process one way, and the Republicans and conservatives look at it another way. And it's unfortunate, but we're all Americans, and we have to do what we can to make sure that, number one, the elections are secure, which I think Governor Abbott and the legislature did in Texas. But there's still some lingering doubt out there, and we have got to get past that. And I don't know if we don't trust the results of this election, and I've said this publicly, everything I've seen says these are good, tight races. But Real Clear Politics, every poll shows that every one of those top statewide offices, the Republicans are leading. Mm-hmm. If even one of those guys is surprised and loses, say Dan Patrick loses to Mike Collier, after the elections, after the counting is stopped on Tuesday night and restarted on Wednesday morning, and that flips, particularly in a Harris County,
Right.
there's going to be a lot of questions asked.
Right. Well, looking at here, let's just look at Tom Green County real quick. We'll go down locally, then we can work our way out.
There's about 70,984 registered eligible voters in this election. Somewhere around 21.1% of the folks have cast ballots early at those 5 locations.
Man, you memorized it. So we have about 21.1% turnout so far of the 70. Let's just round it up to 71,000 registered voters in the county. Right. And then of that, it looks like, well, not of that, but the Republicans are trending at 43.8% of the turnout. Not of the turnout, but of the Republicans are turning out. So we have about, 43.8%. Actually, they think 43.8% of Republicans have turned out. And then of the 3,000, 4,000 Democrats, they're saying that only 40% have turned out.
Yeah, and I think there's an enthusiasm gap, and the further in the country you get away from the border, the economy is the key issue. It's the one issue that everybody votes on. If I get my paycheck here and I go to the gas station and gas is higher, and I go to the grocery store and groceries are higher, and I get frustrated by the time I get home and I've got a handful of change left. People are voting with their pocketbook, and they will do that in this election.
In Texas, I think the farthest what you can get away from the border is East Texas. Far East Texas up toward Tyler. So Smith County, which is Tyler, Texas. We're looking at enthusiasm gap. They have 153,000 voters there. 45,000 have voted, which is 29.8%, more than here.
Okay.
And it's almost tied between Democrats and Republicans as far as the enthusiasm at 55.8 and 55.3.
Okay.
55.8 for Republicans, 55.3 for Democrats. Now, Smith County is not a urban liberal bastion like Travis County.
Right.
So I think this pretty much talks to what you're talking about. At the further away from the border you get, the more even or more tighter or more,
and the issues shift, and the
issues shift.
Issues that matter to me when I walk into that poll, and with inflation at a 40-year high, the guy in the White House is responsible for that.
Well, one thing that did not measure in your talk there is abortion. Abortion is like the clarion call for the Democrat Party. We have Roe versus Wade overturned. You've got to elect Democrat, liberal progressives, and so that we can preserve our rights to have an abortion.
And that's right. With the preemptive heartbeat bill in Texas that the legislature passed by an overwhelming majority, the governor signed, that kicked in when the Supreme Court essentially sent that decision-making back to the states by vacating Roe v. Wade. And locally, the focus of this election, why we're seeing probably going to be a 45 to 50% turnout in a midterm election, is because of the sanctuary city for the unborn proposition on the ballot.
So what's happening is there's a group of people they've established a PAC. It's mostly pastors and people that lead churches. They want to make San Angelo a sanctuary city for the unborn, which brings with it a city ordinance that is, from a lot of people on the left, they'll say, man, this is draconian, doesn't even have an exception for rape or incest.
Yep.
And but at the same time, it does give an exception for the life of the mother, so you have the standard exceptions there. However, that thing has gotten a lot of people talking.
It really has, and again, that's why we're seeing the turnout, because there are people who are passionate on both sides. I think that brings it to the forefront, and that's what elections are about.
But one of the things about bringing this to the forefront is we're in a heavily Republican county. I mean, this county went 72% for Trump last election, so there's not really that much of a risk. But nationwide, Republicans are afraid they were afraid that the abortion issue was going to, I guess, diminish the red tide or diminish the red wave. And we don't know how much that that happens. There's some races in Virginia and New Hampshire that we got to look at to see how things go on the abortion issue.
Well, I think that a couple of things have happened. That was months ago, and the folks who are very passionate about the right to abortion were all fired up. But since then, you've had three increases in the prime rate,
Right.
And
The basis points, the 75 basis points, yes.
and the absolute worst inflation.
And the stock
in
market's in
40
the gutter.
years.
People's 401ks are way down.
The economy the economy is affecting everybody, whether you live paycheck to paycheck or whether you've got a 401k.
Well, the big thing is the fuel. I mean, the cost to fill up your car. I mean, an F-150 costing over $100 to fill up. When the gas pump stops because they only got enough to give you $100 credit, and it stops at $100, you can't even fill up your truck. You don't think working class Americans aren't seeing that?
That's what they're thinking. And then everybody that goes to the grocery store, what was $50 3 months ago was now $75, $80. That hurts everybody. And the people who were all fired up about other issues are now. I think there is a larger voting bloc that is upset about, how do I make it from this paycheck to the next paycheck? And history has proven time and time again that the worse the economy is, the harder people are hit in their pocketbook, the more they vote.
James Carville's "The Economy Stupid." That's why Bill Clinton beat George H.W. Bush back in 1992.
That's correct.
They convinced people that it was George H.W. Bush's fault that the economy stunk.
And that has stuck with everyone who sits in the Oval Office, and that is Joe Biden right now.
Right.
And in Texas, his candidate for governor is Robert Francis O'Rourke.
Okay, so you're a political analysis or an analyst, and I am an analyst. So we're the San Angelo Live political analysts, but you have the political desk with the Yantis Green. I don't.
Yes.
So just bouncing things off. Let's give us some predictions. Let's start with nationwide.
Okay.
Nationwide. Let's talk about, everyone's talking about, will the House get taken over by the Republicans? By how many seats will the House? I think we're only down 5 Republicans, right? So how many net gain? How many net gain will it be for the House Republicans to take over the House? I'm going to say, I'll just throw it out there. I'm going to say we're going to gain more than 30 seats. 30 seats or greater.
Okay. All right. I was thinking like 23, but
I know you've been reading too much Wall Street Journal.
I do think the House is going to flip. I think the country's ready for that, and I think that strategically, the Republicans have put the work in to make that happen. I'm not that confident about the Senate. I think we're going to wind up with a tie there.
All right, so in the Senate, I disagree. I think the one race to watch, there's 3 or 4 in Virginia we'll talk about tomorrow, and there's one in New Hampshire. These are House races, and one in Indiana. But I think if Herschel Walker pulls it out and wins, it's going to be a 53% or 53 senator Republican majority.
Okay,
that's my prediction. If Herschel Walker can pull it out.
Well, and even if not, even if it's a conservative win and the Republicans gain control of the House, what that does for the next 2 years is frustrate the White House and the progressives. And from that standpoint, it makes a whole different ball game, at least for the next presidential election. And I think that within 24 hours, we're going to know if Donald Trump's going to run.
Right. So Donald Trump, the rumors right now, New York Post reported early this afternoon that Donald Trump is going to announce his candidacy for presidency tomorrow, right? Or no, tonight.
As early as tonight.
So he has a rally with J.D. Vance in Ohio. And the rumor is at that rally, he's going to announce that he's going to run for president.
And it would not surprise me. That is a very Trump-esque way to do things when you've got Election Day tomorrow.
Right.
What does that do to voters heading into the polls for the midterm? Absolutely classic move that Trump would make would be to announce today rather than wait until after the election.
Right. All right. So that's nationwide. You're saying the Senate is you're being a wishy-washy on the Senate. You don't
I'm
think
being a pragmatist. I think it's going to be 50-50.
But you know that you think 23 houses, there are 23 seats in the House.
I believe 23 seats in the House.
I think we're going to be a net gain of 30. That's probably 23 total. I don't know, 25 total.
The Republicans will control the House.
There's no doubt, but I think it's going to be by 30 seats. 30 seats.
Okay.
Yeah.
But either way, the quagmire, the slow-moving process in Washington is going to get slower.
And the other thing that voters need to understand, if we vote in Republicans to take over the Senate at 54, even 51, 53, 54 senators to 47, 46, they still don't have the 60 votes to
Right.
get over over the filibuster.
There's virtually no way to make anything happen in the Senate.
So you can't override a veto, for example.
Right.
So if we had 60 Republicans in the House and all 60 Republicans agreed, of course you're going to have wishy-washy Republicans like that one from Alaska and
Right.
But the deal,
Utah.
the one from Utah, yes, his name is Romney.
It would be Romney.
Romney, yeah.
Mitt Romney.
Mitt Romney, who's trying to get an independent elected over Mike Lee,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Anyway, that's national stuff. Y'all don't care about national. Let's go to statewide. Statewide, it's Abbott versus Beto. What do you think?
I think Abbott is going to win that one. Real Clear Politics Friday had him up 9.2 points, and in every poll that they looked at, Abbott was leading Beto O'Rourke. I think some of his luster is gone, and I think the issue has shifted from.
I don't think it's Beto's luster that's gone necessarily. I think a lot of people's 401ks are too down, and they don't really care about the things that Beto is selling.
They care about this paycheck. They care about that paycheck on the 15th. And when money is involved and voters go into the polls, and it's stick with the guy who is leading us in the right direction, and or take a chance on somebody you don't know.
And the other thing about Abbott this year, he has run a very smart air raid campaign. I don't know if you've seen it on pre-rolls, like when you're watching streaming
Everywhere.
at home, when you're watching YouTube, it's everywhere, and on Facebook. I mean, it's Abbott video commercials, and they're really, really effective. I mean, they have the one where he talks about how the tree fell on him and it crippled him. And then you have the anti-Beto stuff with him breaking, smashing a wall of bricks. That one saying he's going to take everything out with you. So I think he's done really good there. What about Collier versus Dan Patrick?
Mike Collier is an articulate guy. He's a smart guy, energy guy. He has garnered some Republican support from some outgoing Republicans who have nothing to lose.
Like the Tarrant County judge.
Right. And bless his heart, Mike, he has a better shot than anybody on the Democrat ballot to win tomorrow. But the caveat is Mike Collier hitched his wagon to fix the damn grid. And the grid was fixed throughout his whole campaign. We went through a scorching summer while he was campaigning.
I remember that.
The grid is going to fail.
Every day
the grid is going to fail. And
you were getting upset about this because you're saying, I'm tired of these headlines about the grid about to fail because it was so hot. Remember how scorching hot it was all summer long?
And
we went 60 days with it above 100 degrees. And every day some mainstream media, meaning liberal media, not us, would come out. When they come out with the grid's going to fail today.
Yeah, the grid's going to fail. Look how close it is. Oh, just a little bit more and the grid's going to fail. The grid never failed because the legislature took action and ERCOT took action and the energy companies fixed what was wrong. But Mike Collier, running for lieutenant governor, said the grid is not fixed. It's going to fail. The grid is not fixed. It's going to fail. And it never did.
If you're worried about your paycheck and you're worried about the price of gas, one thing that Mike Collier also hitched himself to was he was Joe Biden's campaign director for Texas.
Yes.
So he helped get Joe Biden elected.
Yes, he did.
And he helped put those people in office who are making gas prices go way up. And so you can't do that and win. I just don't, and I don't think Dan Patrick has done enough to talk about that. The other thing I'll say about Dan Patrick is, the lieutenant governor. This is the race we're talking about. The lieutenant governor sets the agenda in the Texas Senate.
He runs the show.
He runs the show. He decides what bills are going to come up. I think it's very. I mean, I know I ran for county judge, and I'm I kind of looked into that, peered over the wall into that. But I think that 3.5% rollback, I mean, they went from 7% down to 3.5% rollback tax rate was so smart. And it really controlled, particularly Dallas County, Travis County, Harris County. It really controlled the leftist, Lena Hidalgo can't jack your rates up without you voting for it.
Your property taxes. That was
right.
They really squeezed that ability for cities and counties and schools especially to raise the tax rate. It was 4%, and now it's 3.5%.
I think it was more than 4%, wasn't it 7%?
And it was 8% at one point.
8%, yeah.
But what they've done is now you've got 3.5%, and it's an automatic rollback.
Right.
Prior to a rollback election, you have an election among the people to say, we don't want this tax rate.
So basically what they're saying, counties and municipalities, everyone complains about the tax rates, property tax rates. What Dan Patrick put in place was that 3.5% cap that made it really difficult for school districts, counties, and cities to raise your property taxes. In fact, a lot of people had to lower their property taxes in order to keep the gross revenue increase year over year off of those. Everyone talks about the appraisal district and how they jack up your rates and stuff like that. Well, what they said, the revenue can't exceed 3.5% of the previous year. And by doing that, it really made our local government officials look closely at what they're spending their money on. I mean,
yeah, it did, and you're right. That was a good move on behalf of the legislature, and I've talked to Dan Patrick, and he and the legislature have said that priority one, when 10 days after everyone is sworn into office, after Inauguration Day on the 1st, when the legislature meets in January, they're going to hit property tax reduction again.
Mm-hmm. Well, they've certainly kept a lid on it. It's the property tax, your gross amount's still going up, but it's not going up nearly as much as it could be.
And there are even rumors about negotiations about eliminating, and Governor Abbott said this when he was here at Fuentes Cafe downtown. They are looking at eliminating property tax, M&O property tax for schools altogether. Now that is something beyond me. I don't know where the funding source would be.
It's going to take a lot. It's going to take a lot of the local control away from the school districts. If you're on the school board and the school board decides to do something that's not in alignment with what the state wants, more so today, or more so in the future, if they do that than it is today, the state can just cut that funding. And they can still do it today. I mean, because I don't know, probably half our school district budget comes from the state.
Yeah, and we've been pushing for that for the state to pay more of their share. So all those dynamics are in play, and that's why it matters who you elect now to go to Austin.
Now, the reason why these county judges, these Republican county judges who are rhinos, like the Tarrant County judge, reason why they endorse Mike Collier, who looks like a Republican, smells like a Republican, but he's a Trojan horse. I promise you, this guy, is because they don't like that 3.5% cap.
Right.
They want to spend money wantonly in Tarrant County on all their favorite projects, and Dan Patrick won't let them do it.
Well, and they're really squeezed, especially counties like Tom Green and smaller counties like Erie County and Sterling County. They're really squeezed by that because you can't raise any revenue, but the cost of those mandated services, unfunded mandates, the state says, counties will do X, Y, and Z.
Well, not just unfunded mandates. I mean, the cost of gas to run your sheriff's office.
Yeah, that's
going to go up.
Mandated,
right?
Cost.
Or you need to pay your sheriff's deputies a lot more money because Crane County is recruiting in our COG. When they go through law enforcement school, and our COG, they have a bulletin board, and there's Crane County will pay you double what you're making now in Tom Green County.
Right.
Now, Tom Green County can recruit new deputies based on quality of life, and you get the Red Arroyo, you can go jogging down, and the wonderful nightlife at the Dead Horse, all that kinds of things. But they don't have that in Crane County. I mean, the Crane County is nothing, you know.
Well, and you know, through your race in that primary, you know, we heard that a lot. Is you know, you pay your starting jailers $14.22 an hour, and you've got 23 positions you haven't filled. You cannot fill at that
And at the
rate.
same time, it was $17.22, but
$17.22.
if they raised it up to $22, it was going to be, I think, $2 or $3 million liability on the county. I mean, it was a crazy. It was a very bad choice. But at the same time, they figured out how to work it out, and we haven't heard anything. I mean, Sheriff Hanna went to the commissioner's court. They worked things out, and he thinks he has stemmed the bleeding. I've talked to him.
Well, and it's still a very tough thing, and we know that the criminal justice through the governor's office, there's a lot of funding there, especially that's coming with the public defender's office now. So there are some different funding formulas that are coming from the state, and those, of course, are going to get tweaked again come January.
So these are funded mandates.
The funded mandates. That's yeah.
All right. So we talked about statewide. Is there anything else in the statewide? Well, of course, every one of the offices I saw when I saw the last poll, the Democrats were polling in the high 30s, the Republicans in the high 40s or low 50s. Right. So it looks like it's going to be a sweep.
It should be, and I think that we're going to be watching for that. And if it's not, I think that's going to be a huge story.
Lena Hidalgo has
cheated
the Democrats out of it. So is you going to blame her for all of it?
Well, I just you know, political parties shenanigans occur, and in years past, the way you won elections was by getting all the votes before they're counted, and now it appears that sometimes in some places that there's some shenanigans after the votes have been cast and while they're being counted.
All right, locally, all of our candidates are pretty much running unopposed. County Judge is Lane Carter, and he has a write-in candidate, Gary Jenkins, right?
Yep.
How do you think that's going? What do you think Gary Jenkins is going to poll at?
Well, I would be surprised to see more than 1 or 2%. And the reason is it's
so how many write-ins is 1 or 2%? That'd be about 1,000.
Mechanically, 500, 800. Mechanically, you've got to physically write in his name correctly on the ballot.
So if you misspell it, it doesn't count.
If you misspell it, it doesn't count. It is an exercise in democracy. It's an exercise in fairness. But the practical.
Wait, I don't agree with you. How is it fair that Gary Jenkins he basically got a shortcut. He didn't have to go through the Republican primary. I mean, he claims he's a conservative independent, whatever conservative independent is, but he didn't have to go through the primary process. He skipped out on that. Right, and he jumped ahead of the line, and now he tried to get on the ballot, and then he turned in, I think, 700-800 signatures, but they could only verify 400 of them, right? How is that fair?
Well, at the end of the day, it's going to be fair because there are some voters who are passionate about voting for him, and they will have their voice and they'll have their day.
But they could have had it during the Republican primary.
The genius of the democracy is, the genius of our process is, it's going to work.
Right. You think so?
The will of the people is going to win out. I trust the voters. The voters, I've said this before, the stars might lie, but the numbers never do.
Well, I understand that there's no way he's going to win because no one's going to be able to spell his name right because it's too long. But I will say this. I got a call from one of my supporters back in my political days. He said, "Joe, we're writing you in." Just remember, Joehyde. It's a lot easier to remember than Gary Jenkins. How do you spell that? I mean, is it Gary Jinki? I mean, how do you spell it? But Joe Hyde, Hyde, is a lot easier. If I can get 10 votes.
If you get 10 votes.
If I get 10 votes, I'm going to demand a recount.
Okay, there you go. But no, Tom Green County is a overwhelming Republican county. There were no Democrats fielded for any of the offices that were up during this midterm election. And so those races were decided in the primary and runoff back in the spring. Matter of fact, on your ballot, there are 12 elected officials who were just listed as These folks didn't have anybody running against them. Just so you know, they have been reelected.
So the only way to really measure how much people like or dislike these politicians have no opponents is to look at the undervotes.
Yeah, but even these don't even appear on. You don't get to vote for them. These 12.
Oh, you don't even get to vote for them?
No, they're not on the ballot. They're not on the ballot. They are listed as they've already been elected.
Wow. So that's why Andrew Graves, County Court at Law number 2, was the only candidate for that thing because the Democrats didn't put anyone up.
Right.
And he is now sworn in already.
Well, he was sworn in because Judge Roberts went ahead and retired before her term.
She took an early vacation.
Yeah. But those, the district clerk, the county clerk, the county commissioner of precinct 2, the county commissioner of precinct 4, the justices of the peace who've already been elected, all elected as Republicans, they were declared the winner because they didn't have an opponent in November on the ballot. So those 12, you don't even get to cast a vote for because you've already done that in the primary.
Right. All right. So that's the county election. The city, there's one little thing before we go into the sanctuary city issue. In Abilene, there is a city ordinance that's on the ballot. Okay. This is kind of interesting. They want to reword the ordinance to get rid of all references to men. And they want to turn it into persons, like not councilmen, but council persons, or he or her. They want to just basically gender normalize the city ordinances.
Okay.
Which, people are saying, well, it's no big deal. And there's actually a female city councilwoman there who is, I think she's the only female on the city council in Abilene. She's very appreciative of it. She's saying, finally, women get recognition in the ordinances. My take on it is, with all this pronoun stuff going on, the craziness in our politics, doing this right in the middle of that, it is a slippery slope. Abilene pretty soon will have gender neutral pronouns in their ordinances.
Okay.
Anyway, I don't know if it's going to pass. It might pass.
If that's what the folks in Taylor County want, then that more power to them.
Taylor and Nolan County. Anyway, so sanctuary city for the unborn. I know that this is break some news here. When the group got together to try to put through this ordinance, they polled it, and it polled at 54% against.
Okay.
54%
I did not
against.
know that.
Yes. So they knew that they were in an uphill battle the entire way to get this ordinance passed. They worked hard. They've been organized. I witnessed some of the texting campaign over the weekend to see what was going on. Early voting, the exit polls are looking pretty good for it, but we don't know. What do you think?
I think it's going to pass. I think it's going to pass comfortably in San Angelo. I think this is a very conservative town, and there are a lot of people of faith, and the difference is that those people of faith vote, and
not the purple-haired people screaming in the streets.
The folks the progressives on the other side of this issue, just don't get out en masse and vote.
Right. And of course, throughout the campaign for this, we've had some, the left try to provoke it a little bit. They said, we're going to have a protest at a church. At a church, and I think that angered some people, and that caused quite the reaction where we had 2 Democrats show up with a voter registration booth, and they were faced down by 250 Christians on the steps of a church.
Right.
I mean, the visual of that was incredible.
Yeah, the optics were absolutely incredible. And I want to mention one other thing. We have been as fair and as open with this issue and letters to the editor as anybody. As a matter of fact, we've been more open than anybody else in town.
And we don't charge people to read it.
We have taken on that issue, and we have published every letter to the editor that has come. Some of them have been very uncomfortable for us to do, but we did that.
Which one was uncomfortable?
Well, we'll just leave it.
I think it was J.W. Lawns. I think
that wasn't it. J.W. I was proud to publish that. He's a thinking man. We don't agree on the issue, but it was a very well written.
Oh, it must have been David
piece.
Curry.
No.
Did you like David Curry's too?
No. Miles McMillan was the one that I had a lot of indigestion over. But the difference between us and the Standard Times is the Standard Times cherry-picked the letters to the editor that they published. They were all anti-sanctuary city, and most of them were placed behind that paywall so that you had to pay the Standard
But you still
Times to
got,
read
but
them.
you saw the headline, so they were trying to say the confirmation bias in this town is that everyone's against it.
Right.
And, the thing that I realized from being out there in the city and watching this, I mean, I've been watching this issue for a year and a half. The first time I really noticed this was back last year, I think in August. They were trying to get the city council to just pass the ordinance themselves without having to go to a referendum. I've never seen the McNeese Convention Center with a line out the door for a city council meeting. I mean, I've been through all the Republic Services trash contract stuff. I've been through Lee Pfluger's his transloading facility. All those things together would not put as many people into the city council chambers as this sanctuary city for the unborn issue did.
That's correct. That's
So
very right.
I think the strategy for the pro-sanctuary city for the unborn side is to change the electorate a little bit and motivate the churchgoers, which is probably 60% of this town, to get to the polls and vote for it. So I think they can't win on a poll, they can't win on a popularity contest, but if they change the composition of the voters for this election, maybe they can. And it might be a good year to do it because Beto has no coattails. He's not exciting anyone to come.
Well, and again, it goes back to that people are voting with their pocketbook. That this 40-year high inflation, and when you go to the grocery store, what you find on the shelves, if the shelves have anything on them, is much more expensive than it was 3 months ago, 6 months ago, and people like me, the working people, paycheck to paycheck folks.
And me, I'm a working people too.
They
Stiff.
care about that, and when your bill is higher at the grocery store, you say, "Hey, wait a minute, somebody's responsible for this," and that motivates a lot of people to go out and vote.
And it's not just that. I mean, we're only on in this world, and we're only able to work so many years. And when you take away years from us, when you make down economy years, like we're kind of going into right now, we can't. It's been kind of, we don't know what it's going to do. What that does, it takes away opportunity for everyone. If you're down the lowest rung of the ladder and you want to walk your way up, it's really hard to do when you have the weight of the economy pushing down on you. So likewise, if you want to expand, like we like to expand, San Angelo Live does, it makes it really, really difficult. You got to be very deliberate about how you do it. But because, I mean, it's not, blowing and going like it was in 2019.
Right.
I mean, 2019 was a wonderful year. Just remember that. And there's reasons why it's not like 2019. I can tell you right now as a business owner here in town. But anyway, we have talked a long time. We probably are down to like 3 people on. And Trammell has gone to sleep at the control wheel. But it's always a pleasure to talk to you on the air.
Thanks.
We're going to do this again tomorrow night, twice. We're going to do one show at 7 o'clock, right when the polls close. We'll have the early returns, and then we'll come out right after, probably around 9 to 10 o'clock. We're not going to make a hard time on it to announce the final calls and give our analysis, and we'll have some guests on. I hope we can find some guests to come on. If you want to be a guest, contact us. But anyway, for Yantis Green, here to my right, I'm Joe Hyde, and back to you, Matt.
Hey folks, Todd Price from Jim Bass Ford. Have you noticed the last couple of years cars and trucks have been overpriced? Well, not anymore. At Jim Bass, we have a slew of F-150s priced around $4,000 off MSRP. And my Uncle Perk used to tell me, Todd, opportunities are never lost. Somebody takes the ones you miss. Don't y'all miss this one. Jim Bass Ford, Houston Hart and Hardin Road, or 24/7 at bassbunch.com.
Well, we thought Matt was going to give you the out, but it looks like myself and Yantis are going to give you the out. Yantis, what do you think of this live stream show? It's on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter.
Well, I think everybody needs to tune in and especially get the app on the San Angelo Live app and follow us on Twitter. Twitter's getting bigger and bigger. Thank you, Elon Musk.
Elon Musk is wonderful. Oh, yeah, and you know what, Matt Trammell, the reason why he's not here is he's out there TikToking. You know what TikTok is?
I don't know what TikTok is.
50 followers since
We have
over the weekend.
We have 50 followers on TikTok and 70,000 on Facebook, and we reach 50,000 a day on our website. So, but sanangelolive.com, you can find out where all these things are. But this show is groundbreaking.
It really is, and it's fun to be a part of, and we have as many guests as we possibly can, and we have a lot of fun, and we're not, boxed in by some old dusty journalistic rules that other folks have to follow. So
we can just be truthful and real. That's what we want to do.
Truthful and real. That's where we are.
That's right. Well, until tomorrow, we'll be here for the election return results at 7 o'clock. But before that, we'll run the news at 4. So 4 o'clock every day, plus or minus. Give us up to about 15 minutes late, because sometimes we have breaking stories that we're trying to put together. But we put them up live stream. That way, there's nothing pre-produced or anything on this. These are real live stream shows. And until tomorrow, I'm Joe Hyde. For Yantis Green, we'll see you.